The world you are living in is not fair. And the sooner you stop pretending that it is, the sooner you stop living like someone whose entire life is shaped by other people's decisions. Right now, at this very moment, someone less intelligent than you is being listened to while you remain invisible. Someone with half your discipline is being praised while your competence goes unnoticed. Someone with fewer skills, fewer principles, and fewer achievements is already living the life you keep hoping you'll eventually earn. And it is not because they are better. It is because they understand something you don't. The real mechanics of human psychology. This is the brutal truth no one ever told you because they benefit from your blindness. The world does not reward good hearts. It rewards strong presence. It does not respect purity. It respects power. It does not elevate the well-intentioned. It elevates the well-positioned. People do not judge you by the goodness inside your soul. They judge you by the dominance you project, the boundaries you enforce, the consequences you deliver, and the inevitability you radiate. For years you have been told that fairness is the natural order of the universe, that if you work hard, stay kind, follow the rules, remain patient, and suppress your darker instincts, life will open its doors for you. But look around. Has that ever aligned with reality? Or have you watched confident idiots get promoted over you? Manipulative people build influence while the honest remain stagnant. Charismatic pretenders soak in admiration while genuine competence goes unnoticed. Sociopathic charmers attract followers while decent people are ignored. I know this because I lived it. I used to be the person who had all the right answers, but no one listened. I was the intelligent one, the hardworking one, the sincere one, and the completely invisible one. I watched weaker, louder, less principled people outrun me, not because they possessed anything greater, but because they played a different game, a darker one, a more strategic one, a game I wasn't even aware existed. And the moment I realized this, every illusion that shaped my worldview shattered. You've been conditioned to be agreeable in a world that rewards strategic aggression. You've been taught to be nice in a world moved by power. You've been trained to wait your turn in a world where turns are taken, not given. The game is rigged, not against the weak, but against the naive, against the predictable, against the emotionally honest who never learned to wield their shadow, against the people who believe that kindness is a strategy rather than a vulnerability. But what you are reading now is not a pep talk. It is a psychological intervention, a dismantling of every illusion that quietly kept you obedient, a shift from victimhood to sovereignty. Because power is not something granted, it is something assumed. Influence is not inherited, it is constructed. Respect is not deserved, it is engineered. You're not here to be good, you're here to be formidable. Before we descend into the architecture of modern domination, I want you to declare something, not for me, but for yourself. I refuse to be psychologically dominated ever again. This is not a slogan, this is a contract. A mental severance from the old world you've been clinging to. Because from this moment on, you enter a different arena, one where fairness dissolves and only psychology remains. And whoever understands psychology wins. So let's dismantle the first illusion that has been quietly destroying your potential, the fantasy of fairness. You've been told that fairness is a virtue, that being fair makes you noble, that waiting your turn makes you humble. But the truth is this: fairness is the most effective psychological trap ever invented. When you believe the world is fair, you become passive. You become predictable. You become compliant. You become a perfectly behaved prisoner who doesn't realize that the cage he lives in is locked from the inside. Fairness is a story told by people who benefit from your obedience. Every time you rely on fairness, someone else rewrites the rules. Every time you wait for reciprocity, someone else exploits your consistency. Every time you think, my turn will come, someone else cuts the line. And because you believe in fairness, you don't even resist. This is exactly what Machiavelli understood 500 years ago when he wrote, "Men should either be treated generously or destroyed, for they take revenge for slight injuries. For heavy ones, they cannot." In psychological terms, this means, do not engage in half measures, half boundaries, half assertions. When you respond weakly to strong personalities, you do not gain respect, you invite retaliation. When you mildly push back against aggressive people, you ignite hostility without gaining any leverage. When you try to reason with those who operate purely from self-interest, you paint a target on your back. Here is the truth no one wants to face. You do not get what you deserve in life. You get what you negotiate, what you demand, what you enforce, what you refuse to tolerate, what you walk away from, what you condition your environment to believe about you. People do not treat you according to your values. They treat you according to the consequences of crossing you. If crossing you has no cost, you will be crossed. If disrespecting you has no impact, you will be disrespected. If ignoring you feels safe, you will be ignored. This is not cynicism. This is psychology. And once you internalize this truth, fairness becomes irrelevant. You stop waiting for people to do the right thing. You start constructing situations where people must do the smart thing, the self-preserving thing, the thing that keeps their access to you intact. You learn to create incentives, not expectations. You learn to design consequences, not lectures. This is the core of Machiavellian power. Not cruelty, not deception, not malice, but structure. The architecture of incentives, the orchestration of perception, the mastery of emotional discipline. And this brings us to the second illusion you must obliterate. The illusion that ruthlessness means cruelty. You've been conditioned to believe that being ruthless means being heartless, aggressive, violent, or unkind. But that lie was planted in you by people who benefit from your emotional volatility. They want you easy to provoke, easy to confuse, easy to guilt trip, easy to shame, easy to manipulate. Because a person who loses control of their emotions loses control of the entire battlefield. Ruthlessness is not rage. Ruthlessness is emotional discipline, ice in the veins, clarity under pressure, the ability to feel everything without letting anything dictate your behavior. The ruthless person does not yell. They do not panic. They do not defend. They do not retaliate for validation. They move with precision. They calculate the impact. They wait for the correct moment. They ask themselves only one question: which response strengthens my position and weakens theirs? Emotionally reactive people never accumulate real power because they are predictable. And predictability is psychological vulnerability. When someone can provoke you, they can control you. When someone can make you angry, they can distract you. When someone can make you defensive, they can expose your insecurities. But when you master your emotions, you become untouchable. Imagine someone publicly mocks you or tries to humiliate you. The average person reacts instantly, defending themselves, explaining, arguing. This reveals insecurity. It signals weakness. It validates the attacker. But the ruthless person freezes the moment. They observe the attacker like a scientist studying a specimen. Their mind becomes a silent war room. What does this person gain from provoking me? What response elevates my status while degrading theirs? What action ends the entire conflict in one stroke instead of inviting 10 more? This is what Machiavelli meant when he said injuries must be inflicted all at once. Not through drama, not through arguments, but through one decisive move that permanently rewires the power dynamic. Ruthlessness is not cruelty. Ruthlessness is efficiency. And this is where your transformation begins. Now that the illusion of ruthlessness has been dismantled, we move into the third distortion that has quietly shaped your entire identity: the obsession with being liked. You have spent years bending, softening, shrinking, and compromising in the hope that likability would protect you. But here is the truth. No one had the courage to tell you. Likable people are used. Likable people are underestimated. Likable people are overworked, overburdened, and overlooked. Likable people are the emotional trash bins of their social circles. Likable people drown in responsibilities that were never theirs. And likable people suffer because they believe likability holds weight in a world designed around dominance, presence, and power. Likability is cheap, expected, forgettable. Respect is rare. Fear, not terror but psychological gravity, is unforgettable. Boundaries are magnetic. Mystery is intoxicating. Presence is undeniable. When you are merely liked, people take emotional risks with you because they assume you will forgive them. They know that your self-worth is tied to their approval. They know you will bend rather than break, yield rather than confront, justify rather than assert. But when you are respected, everything shifts. People calculate before crossing you. They weigh costs before making decisions that involve you. They think twice. This is why Machiavelli wrote, "It is much safer to be feared than loved if one must choose." Modern ears distort this into cruelty, but the original meaning is surgical. If you seek love, you become dependent. If you command respect, you become sovereign. And sovereignty, not likability, is the currency of power. Think about your own patterns. How many times have you said yes when every part of you screamed no, just to avoid disappointing someone? How many times have you swallowed disrespect because confronting it made you uncomfortable? How many times have you softened your boundaries so you wouldn't appear difficult? How many times have you played small to make someone else feel big? These behaviors are not kindness. They are acts of self-erasure. You teach people to treat you like you do not matter. You cannot be respected if you depend on being liked. Respect begins where dependency ends. You become formidable the moment your presence becomes selective. Your yes becomes rare. Your standards become non-negotiable, and your self-worth becomes independent of external validation. You grow into a force, one whose approval must be earned rather than assumed. Once this shift occurs, something subtle but profound happens. Your energy changes. People begin watching themselves around you. They recalibrate their tone. They reconsider their requests. You don't become threatening. You become consequential. They know that access to you is valuable, and the potential loss of that access is costly. This brings us naturally to the fourth pillar of psychological dominance: decisive action. Weak people warn, strong people act. Weak people beg for respect. Strong people show the consequences of disrespect. Weak people repeat themselves, over-explain themselves, and perform emotional labor for other people's comfort. Strong people move once, precisely, and never need to repeat the same lesson twice. Nothing destroys your influence faster than empty threats. Every time you say, "Don't do that again," and then tolerate it again, you dismantle your own authority. Every time you warn someone without consequence, you teach them that your boundaries are imaginary. Every time you express frustration without action, you reveal that your emotions are cheap and your patterns are predictable. Psychologically dominant people almost never warn. They watch, they observe, they study patterns quietly, and then, without anger or theatrics, they act. Once, decisively, disproportionately to any single incident, but perfectly proportionate to the accumulated pattern. Someone repeatedly interrupts you or dismisses your opinions. The typical reaction: annoyance, a half-hearted "could you let me finish?" irritated sighs. But the decisive response is surgical. You wait for the perfect moment, public enough for it to matter, and you say calmly and coldly, "Stop interrupting. I wasn't done." The silence that follows is not humiliation. It is a recalibration of hierarchy. Not because you were cruel, but because you were clear. Or consider a personal example from when I finally learned this lesson. There was someone in my life who constantly relied on me to plan everything: dinners, events, gatherings, and yet they were always late, always uncommitted, always the first to cancel. I spent years hinting, explaining, persuading. Nothing changed, until one day I simply stopped inviting them. No argument, no guilt, no announcement, just deletion. And when they eventually asked why, I responded with one sentence: I plan for people who respect time. After that, everything changed, not just with them, but with everyone who watched. Decisiveness creates psychological gravity. It rewires how people think about you. It teaches them that access to you is conditional and must be protected. This is how boundaries transform from words into reality. But beneath decisive action lurks an even deeper mechanism: perception. The fifth principle: people do not respond to who you really are. They respond to who they believe you are. They interact with your image, not your truth. They interpret your intentions based on the narrative they've built around you, not your actual character. This is why Machiavelli wrote, "Everyone sees what you appear to be. Few experience what you really are." Because appearance is leverage, perception is currency, reputation is power. And in a world where most people make instant judgments, your image is your interface with society. This does not mean becoming fake. It means becoming strategic. The person who understands perception shapes reality. The person who ignores perception becomes its victim. Think about two people who accomplish the same goal. One documents their progress, articulates their reasoning, frames their achievement as deliberate strategy. The other stays silent, believing that work should speak for itself. The truth? Only one gets the opportunities, the recognition, the respect. Because work does not speak for itself, people speak for work. And if you do not shape that narrative, someone else will. Perception is crafted through posture, tone, identity, confidence, silence, association, clothing, the company you keep, the boundaries you enforce, the results you display, the stories others repeat about you, and the details you choose not to reveal. Mystery is power because humans fill gaps with assumptions, and assumptions, once embedded, are hard to rewrite. Which leads naturally into the sixth pillar: narrative control. The world does not run on facts. It runs on interpretations, on stories, on the emotional coherence of events. People do not remember what happened. They remember the meaning someone attached to what happened. And whoever controls that meaning controls outcomes. This is why the first person to frame a conflict almost always wins. The one who establishes the storyline defines the villain, the hero, the intentions, the stakes, and the consequences before facts even surface. Human beings are not rational. They are narrative-driven. Truth is secondary. Coherence is primary. And here is where most people lose the psychological war. They act, but they do not frame. They defend, but they do not redefine. They react, but they do not construct. Narrative control is the ability to tell your story before someone else tells it for you. If you walk away from someone toxic, they might say you abandoned them. But if you frame it first, I established boundaries for my mental health because reciprocity was absent. Your decision becomes strength, not cruelty. The action is the same. The story changes everything. Advanced narrative control means anticipating misinterpretation and pre-framing your moves in ways that elevate your identity. You do not lie. You select the truth that reinforces your sovereignty. And all of this brings us to the seventh principle: systematic consequences. This is where you stop negotiating and start engineering how people behave around you. In the old life, you enforced boundaries with emotions: anger, guilt, frustration. But emotional enforcement drains you. Systemic enforcement frees you. Systems do not argue. Systems do not negotiate. Systems are simply the natural laws of your presence. Treat me well and you gain access. Treat me poorly and you lose it. No speeches, no warnings, just cause and effect. This is the level where power becomes predictable, sustainable, self-maintaining. And once you master it, you step into the highest realm of all: silent dominance. But that is where the final part begins. We now arrive at the eighth and final pillar of true psychological power: silent dominance. This is the level most people never reach, because it requires a kind of inner stillness that can only be developed once illusions have died, boundaries have hardened, and you have stopped trying to prove anything to anyone. Silent dominance is not loud. It is not dramatic. It is not something you declare. It is something others feel. The loudest person in the room is rarely the strongest. The strongest person is the one who speaks the least, listens the most, and reveals almost nothing. They are the ones studying alliances while others boast about them. They observe the tone behind the words, the hunger behind the smiles, the insecurity behind the bravado. They notice who shrinks in the presence of power, who competes for attention, who chases validation, who trembles at confrontation. Silent dominance turns every room into an open book, and when the time comes to act, the silent one strikes with surgical precision. No warnings, no theatrics, no emotional residue, only results. Whether the move involves removing a threat, elevating a loyal ally, shifting the atmosphere of a group, or collapsing someone's influence by revealing a single truth at the perfect moment, the action feels less like an attack and more like inevitability. People walk away saying, "I don't know how they did it, but everything changed." That is silent dominance. It is strategy without announcement, presence without performance, authority without aggression. Machiavelli illustrated this dual nature through one of his most famous ideas: the fox and the lion. The lion cannot defend himself against traps, and the fox cannot defend himself against wolves. One must therefore be a fox to recognize traps, and a lion to frighten wolves. Silent dominance is the seamless merging of both. You see everything silently, and you strike only when necessary, decisively. But to reach this level, you must understand one final truth. The world reacts not to your intentions, but to your power. Not to your kindness, but to your structure. Not to your generosity, but to your boundaries. Not to your morality, but to your consequences. Human beings operate on incentives, not ideals. And if you do not create those incentives, someone else will create ones that serve them at your expense. Think about your own life. How many times have you forgiven too quickly, trying to be the bigger person, only to be disrespected again? How many times have you given second, third, and fourth chances to people who never deserved the first? How many times have you explained your discomfort instead of enforcing it? You believed this made you mature, but in psychological terms, it made you predictable. And predictability is the death of power. This is why the people who hurt you were so confident doing so. They studied your patterns. They knew your forgiveness was guaranteed. They knew you would argue but never act. They knew your boundaries were made of paper, not stone. They knew you would break before you would walk away, and they used this knowledge as leverage. But once you internalize silent dominance, something fundamental shifts. Unpredictability enters your aura. You no longer react emotionally. You no longer argue endlessly. You no longer warn. You simply act. Once. Cleanly. And once people witness this, witness that you are capable of ending access, altering dynamics, or walking away without hesitation, they recalibrate everything. Suddenly, your silence has weight. Your presence has texture. Your decisions have consequence. You no longer feel like an option. They feel like one. You become the psychological variable everyone must account for before they make a move. This is the shift from being acted upon to being the one who acts. From being shaped to being the one who shapes. From being replaceable to becoming irreplaceable. From being ignored to becoming unavoidable. From living like prey to living like a sovereign. But here is the final truth, the one that separates those who dominate from those who remain dominated for the rest of their lives. If you do not master these principles, someone who has mastered them will control you, not always visibly, not always maliciously, but inevitably. Because power is not only something taken, it is something surrendered. And most people surrender their power long before they realize they even had any. They surrender it in the form of emotional reactivity, in the form of excess transparency, in the form of craving approval, in the form of fearing conflict, in the form of waiting for permission, in the form of believing that fairness is real and that good intentions protect them. But now you know the architecture beneath the illusions. Now you understand the mechanics that move your life like hidden gears. Now you see the world not as you were taught to see it, but as it actually is. So you now face a choice, a brutal one, a simple one, a necessary one. Remain the one who reacts, or become the one who decides. Remain the one who is shaped, or become the one who shapes. Remain emotionally transparent, or become strategically selective. Remain liked, or become respected. Remain predictable, or become dangerous. Remain a presence, or become a force. Remain prey, or become sovereign. Power is not cruelty. Power is clarity. Power is intention. Power is discipline. Power is silence. Power is understanding human nature without the comforting lies society wraps around it. Power is the courage to walk into the darker truths that everyone feels, but few dare speak. Most people will never cross this threshold. They will continue living in illusions, hoping for fairness, chasing validation, negotiating self-worth, and calling it virtue. But not you. Not anymore. You stand at the edge of transformation. And once you step forward, the world will never treat you the same again. Because the moment you internalize these principles, the moment you stop apologizing for your existence, stop explaining your boundaries, stop negotiating your worth, stop living in emotional debt, you awaken into a world beneath the world. The real world. The world that has always shaped your life from the shadows. The world that rewards those who understand it and punishes those who don't. And if you're still here, still reading, still hungry for more, then you already know which path is yours. You're not seeking comfort. You're seeking clarity. You're not seeking validation. You're seeking sovereignty. You're not seeking motivation. You're seeking mastery. So if you're ready, truly ready, to continue this descent into psychology, power, self-mastery, emotional discipline, and the darker truths of human nature that most people are too fragile to confront, then step forward. Subscribe to Gaka Mindset. Not for motivation, not for comfort, but for depth, for strength, for psychological sovereignty. Because this is not just a channel. This is your initiation, your evolution, your awakening. And from this point on, the world will never treat you the same again.